3 higher ed authors, 100 plus college and university presidents, dozens of actionable insights for academic leaders. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is now available on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with another installment episode, whatever you want to say, here on the EdUp Experience. I think we're past 550 episodes now, fast approaching 250,000 downloads of this podcast. And of course, as I've said on every episode since it's come out, we did write a book called Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, that is based on the first 125 presidents we interviewed on this podcast. It is on Amazon. We appreciate your support. It has been overwhelming how many folks have picked up the book and celebrated it, and we celebrate you, because the work you do is noble, and somebody needs to do this really, really hard work of serving students. And we have another amazing college and university president here with us today. But before I bring her in, I have to bring my guest co-host back. He's showing up all the time these days, ladies and gentlemen. Here he is. He's Douglas Carlson, and he has a very long title. In fact, it's head of strategy and partnerships, I think, for North America at Lead Squared, or something to that effect, Douglas, right?
Yeah, something like that. Business development, partnership strategy, some of that order.
Well, I think I hit 3 of the 4 of those words. So, anyway, I call him my guest co-host. He's been back enough now. I feel like I don't even need to introduce you. Douglas, thanks for coming back again. And are you excited about today's guest?
Oh, absolutely. There's some cool themes that we'll be able to carry over. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here she is. She's Dr. Elizabeth Meade, and she's president at Cedar Crest College. Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. And where's Cedar Crest College? What do you do? How do you do it?
Sure. So Cedar Crest College is located in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We're part of the Lehigh Valley, which is the 3rd largest metropolitan area in Pennsylvania. Cedar Crest College was founded as a women's college in 1867, right in downtown Allentown. We still are a women's college, something people don't always know, but we also have ventured into adult undergraduate education, which we've been doing since the late 1960s, and more recently, graduate education.
I was looking at your website, and I love the header where it says, catch up, level up, soar ahead. And what does that mean? Why that set of words? Because that resonated with me right away. I'm going, yeah, I like that.
That's really very closely tied into our mission and our founding, right? So 1867, we're founded right after the Civil War. Women historically are not getting educated for anything more than to be leaders of their household. And Cedar Crest comes along. We're founded by members of the United Church of Christ, who say in a very prescient way, our daughters should get the same education that our sons do. But we're still in a context of women being kept out of education. And that continues for more than a century. And so what we begin with is, how do we help an entire class of people, half of the population of the United States, who are being kept out of education, to get the education, to get the experience they need to make their own destinies. When we fast forward to the 1960s, when we start going into adult education, we again have women who've been kept out of the labor market by virtue of the times when you got married and you dropped out of the labor market, kept out of education. And we realized there's a whole group of women who thought they were going to graduate from high school, get married, raise children forever and ever, but found that for reasons of divorce, widowhood, economic need, intellectual curiosity, ambition, they need to get an education. And so we find a way to make that happen. We open the weekend college. So these hardworking women who are working all day, 24 hours a day to raise their children, can catch a break on the weekend and come and get a bachelor's degree. We serve an increasingly diverse population. Again, the theme is people who have been crowded out or faced unusual barriers to education. We give them access to that education so that they can level up, right? So that they can reach their potential, exceed what society thinks that they can do, and change the trajectory of their lives and their families' lives. It's a mission I'm really, really passionate about. And I have just seen it be successful for years and years and years. I've been at Cedar Crest for almost 30 years, started as a faculty member, and that's an unusual career path these days, but it means that I have seen what a college education at Cedar Crest has done for people, and I've kept in touch with them over 30 years, and I've seen what a difference it's made with them.
Amazing.
I will tell you, for you guys listening, and you're thinking that Elizabeth has a lot of passion. I can tell you she does, because as she was talking about this, she was leaning forward talking about Cedar Crest mission, and I'm going, whoa, I love it. I'm very engaged. And what's interesting in what you said with that passion, and you know the conversation that's happening right now around higher education and degrees and skills. It's a skill economy. It's no longer a degree economy. We do have we have detractors. We have a doomsday scenario approach, particularly, and it gets called out all the time, small liberal arts colleges and those that have a religious affiliation are in danger of closing. What's your thought on those two concepts? The value of a college degree for women, particularly who you're serving, and you know, how are you doing? And is all that noise, or is some of that true?
Well, I don't really think it's true in the way that you framed it. But let me sort of come back.
I'm not really good at doing that kind of stuff. Asking good questions, by the way.
So look, the people who are questioning the value of a college education are people who have themselves gotten a college education, and people whom I venture to guess have secured a college education for their children. We do not have a narrative in this country where all these people who have gotten a college education now regret it, despite that I know that there are media outlets trawling for that kind of story. But there are not people out there saying, this has ruined my life. Education has ruined my life, and I didn't need it, and I shouldn't have done it. Education and accessible education, right? Free K through 12 education, accessible higher education is what has driven the economic might of this country since the middle of the 19th century, right? So we were the first country to say, we need to pay for K through 12 education. We need to make it free because we need an educated workforce. We then did the same thing with our universities, and we didn't decide in second, third, fourth, fifth grade who was going to go to college. We said everybody should go to college. And in the early days, we made significant investment in that through the GI Bill, through Pell programs. And that if we stop doing that, we are going to fall seriously behind in the global economy. And part of the danger in the way that you framed it is the idea that there's a dichotomy between skills and education is dangerous, right? It's incorrect and it's dangerous. You have to be educated to get skills. Now, not all education takes place on a college campus, for sure, but the idea that a liberal arts college is a place where you don't pick up skills is simply not supported by the data and outcomes.
Oh, I love that you said that. It's to be quite honest, it's refreshing, because I feel the exact same way. That's why I wrote the book highlighting all the presidents, because I'm like, somebody's doing this great work, and we have, and I say it's not like we don't fight back when you're on the inside of higher education, but it's really easy to be negative. And yes, there's negative things about higher education. Sometimes we move slow. Sometimes we have too many committees. Sometimes we have this, but you have passion and you have life changing that is happening every single day. And we need to communicate that more to at least meet those detractors where they are. Let's have the conversation rather than being one-sided. And Douglas, I'll hand it over to you, but just remember,
I'll be back.
That's great. Well, it's, Dr. Meade and Elizabeth, thank you for letting us, use your first name. One of the things that I hear over and over again so often is the people throwing stones they have amazing educations. And it's just like this deep irony of like, oh, the education system is broken. It's like, well, so why are you here standing on this pulpit? What gave you that ability? And frankly, it's some education, some privilege, is a number of things, but too often it's just so deeply ironic. You're like, really, you're going to give education a hard time. With that said, there's plenty of things that we can address with it. I think your point's really good. Like it's very hard to find someone out there that says the education I received was a waste of time. I think the criticism is more on the lines of, wow, the value and the cost of that education is the thing that I'm concerned about. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on, are there ways that that Cedar Crest is making college more affordable? And I bet there is. Are there ways the system can become more affordable? So there's conversation stops about value. It's like, it's so clear education is important. I think it's the value and what I'm paying for is the problem.
Yes, no, and I'm attentive to that. And we're all very alert to the fact that students are graduating with debt, and that can defer other economically valuable choices. And so I'm completely aware of that. I do just have to say, because I'm standing here on my soapbox, that in the state of Pennsylvania, which is my home state, the average debt that a student that has been incurred by students for a bachelor's degree is $38,000. That's the national average for a bachelor's degree is $26,000. So Pennsylvania lagging. Sorry, Pennsylvania's lagging. And the average cost of a new car is $48,000. And I keep my cars for a really long time. I've never yet kept one longer than 10 years, but I'm still using my undergraduate degree. And I am more than 10 years out of college.
Epic.
So I have to frame that, because yes, it costs money, but houses cost money and cars cost money, and the value is there. The recent data that I saw shows that the economic return of a bachelor's degree versus somebody with a high school diploma is still over $2 million, right? So $38,000 to earn $2 million. I don't know why the value is a question, but the question of how do you pay for it, right? Day to day, I'm in college. How am I going to come up with the money to pay for it? That's real, right? That's absolutely real. So Cedar Crest has been doing a number of things. And first of all, we plow a good amount of money into institutional financial aid. We have a real commitment to making sure that our education is affordable to students. And that includes my work, fundraising for scholarships, and all of the budgetary work that goes beyond that. A couple of other things that we've done that I think are innovative and I know are valued by students is we began about 5 years ago implementing 4+1 programs, because as I said, we have a number of graduate degrees. And so we have students who are able to be here for their 4 years for their undergraduate degree, and then stay only one additional year to get a master's degree instead of 2 years. We began that with the Master's of Education, which is a 2-year master's typically, and we've now expanded it to our MBA, to our crime science masters. We're working on doing it for our master's in nutrition as well. That has got some regulatory issues behind it. And we have a large number of students who have come to us because they know that their vocational plans include having a master's degree. And so they know they are saving 1 year's tuition. As part of our upcoming strategic plan, though, we are working on both a 3-year bachelor's degree and a 3+1 program that would allow students to stay here for 4 years and leave with both a bachelor and master's degree. Our students tend to want to come back for their graduate programs. Cedar Crest inspires a lot of passionate attachment. And so we know that that is going to be successful at retaining students and also helping them to reach their goal with less costs and less debt.
That's incredible. I knew you were going to have a good answer to that, because I love the +1 programs, because I'm sure you can quote all the data, but master's programs are just so valuable from an economic and a career development perspective. I'm also curious, what's your secret sauce? Because why I ask that is, so often schools have a hard time with sort of lifelong learning or someone coming back for the next piece. It sounds like you've really done a good job of cracking, like going on to the next credential to help students. What inspires students to come back?
Oh gosh, a lot of things. I want to say this really, really clearly. Our secret sauce is being small.
Interesting.
Right?
I like that.
Yes, say more.
It gives us a very, very clear advantage. It's economically a little bit more perilous, right? Your ability to scale up. But it is a huge part of the success of our students. It's a huge part of our success in attracting and retaining wonderful faculty and staff. So when students find a home at Cedar Crest, they find a home at Cedar Crest. They drive onto campus. We have a beautiful 84-acre campus. It's a nationally registered arboretum. We've intentionally designed it for a lot of spaces for people to gather and to connect. And we know everybody. When I'm handing everybody their diploma at commencement, I know them all. I have met them. And that's, typically about 400 people. But over time, I have been able to do that. And so the students want to come back for a graduate degree because they know they're coming to a community that knows them, that has embraced them, and that is as committed to their success as they are. That's also then been successful in our adult programs, right? So you'll know that a lot of institutions that have started adult undergraduate programs do so sometimes in a different building, in a different location, with exclusively adjunct faculty. And we took the opposite approach really from the beginning. Our adult learners are taught sometimes by adjuncts, but really primarily by our full-time faculty. They can be here in the day if it works better with their schedule. We intentionally include them in campus life when we have fall family weekend or homecoming. We're expecting our adult learners to come with their kids and be part of the events. And so they feel connected to who we are, to our location, to our faculty, to our staff. And that's the feedback we get from them all the time. So they too come back for graduate programs, and then they are engaged alumna, and I get to meet them 20 years later at a dinner somewhere, and they can tell me how we changed their lives.
That's
you
incredible.
said it in your words. You said, I don't know if you noticed it, you said it or you meant to say passionate attachment. Excuse me. Is that something that you communicate at Cedar Crest? Passionate attachment, is that an intentional set of words?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. There's a trademark there probably. It talks a lot. What you're talking about is value proposition.
Yes.
And a part of marketing is a big part is value proposition and relevance to the consumer, the student in this case. Very rarely have I heard, and I've done a lot of these, somebody say, small. We're small, and that's part of our value proposition. More often, we hear, we have enrollment troubles. We need to grow as fast as possible. And so the question then comes to you that I have for you is, okay, the value proposition is size. How do you ensure your financial sustainability if part of your value proposition is to remain small? Is it steadiness, and is it you maintain your expenses based on a target population? Do you look at alternative revenue streams online versus on ground? And can you talk about your strategic planning a little bit to ensure financial long-term sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. And that certainly is probably the main focus of my job on a day-to-day basis. So, we are very data-driven here at Cedar Crest. And we have been forecasting this enrollment cliff actually since 2010. When I was the provost at Cedar Crest, I participated in writing a white paper for our board of trustees that said in 2026, we're going to see this drop off in enrollment. And so we actually began planning for that, beginning with the 2016 development of our 2017 to 22 strategic plan. So what the data told us is what we think we can expect and maintain in undergraduate enrollment in our women's college. And so we keep a focus on that number. I will say the pandemic was challenging. We did fall behind on that number,
Yep.
but the research, the data, the forecasting that we have done shows that it's still an achievable number for us. And I think we'll be back where we need to be in the fall. But then we've also looked at then how do we, even as there will be fluctuations in that, how do we maintain financial sustainability? And the answer, of course, is a diversity of your portfolio, just it is with all of your investment. For people who had their entire retirement account in Enron, that didn't work out so well for them. You really want to make sure that you've got enough revenue streams. And so we have forecasts for our women's college undergraduate, adult undergraduate, international enrollment as part of that portfolio, and graduate programs. We've been expanding significantly in graduate programs over the last 5 years, but we know that you don't grow your way out of it. There's not an infinite supply of graduate programs and graduate students. So again, we forecasted the number that we need. We're talking about what we need to do to maintain that number. And then we diversify revenue, in terms of auxiliary revenue. We host on our campus one of Allentown's oldest festival of the arts called Mayfair. It used to run in the city park system for years and years and years. It went bankrupt. We took it over. Over Memorial Day weekend, we have 22,000 people on our campus eating, drinking, listening to music. That's been a revenue stream for us, and it has maintained a really important cultural tradition in Allentown.
You know that the world of higher education is experiencing evolutions and revolutions. You want to be part of the progress. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education with insights from more than 100 college and university presidents, will show you how. Get your copy of Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education now on Amazon right away. We think you're going to love it. It's
Amazing.
You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
I love it. That's the data-driven approach that you have to forecasting and looking at things. The great thing about small, and the word small, is that it's relative. You don't need to define it. So if you're a small institution and you go from 500 students to 600 students, does that mean you're big now? No, it means you're just a little bit larger than small. And that 20% increase or whatever in enrollment makes a huge financial difference. And so I like that. But the communication of the value proposition to the student does matter a lot, particularly your on-ground students. And I do know from talking to a couple others, maybe 2 or 3 other women's colleges, because I don't think there are that many.
32.
32. Well, I knew you'd know the number, just for the record. That was a great setup. It is a part of the value proposition to be amongst other women and only other women because of the leadership and the mentorship and the pathways that exist. Do you ever see that changing? Do you see that changing in your adult population that you're serving? How is your mix, and how do you move forward as a part of your planning?
Sure. So we are a women's college. We're proudly a women's college. We will remain a women's college. But we do have co-ed adult programs, co-ed graduate programs, but even that, we tend to attract more women to the college. So our overall population is around 90% women. And it's a huge part of the value proposition. I've been part of a women's college for most of my my career. I went to a women's college. We did go through a time in the 90s where everybody thought things are good now, so we don't need women's colleges, right? Because we've achieved equality. Let's just go on. And there was a time when I think it was challenging to recruit into a women's college. But, the young women of today see the value. They may decide it's not right for them. But I'm not having conversations about why there's an advantage. They know there's an advantage.
How much does safety play a part in that advantage?
Safety plays a big part with the parents, right? And particularly we enroll almost 40% first generation students and students of diverse backgrounds. And so their parents are very concerned about safety. And so when they come to campus and we don't have any through streets that are public streets and they can get a police escort, it is very comforting, absolutely, for the parents.
Douglas.
Now it's your turn.
Yeah, well, I alluded to earlier, there was a good thread here. So so Joe and I had the privilege of also talking to Dr. Lynn Wooten, president of Simmons College. And I'm hearing some really, really good themes. And I think you already probably answered my question, is like very clearly, and you can validate this, it seems like part of your value prop, but even an advantage sometimes when recruiting students for your college being a women's college.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, we attract very ambitious young women. We have expertise in nursing and healthcare, but also in the natural sciences. And you can pick any girl in any high school, co-ed high school in the nation, and she will have a story about how people have tried to dissuade her from studying science. And so when they come and see our science labs and all of the students in the science labs, all the research leads are young women that look like them, they're sold on it. And again, we have the outcomes to show it. The number of our students in math and science who have published papers while still undergraduates who presented at conferences, that they've gone on to extraordinary careers because they're not fighting to be heard in the classroom, right? They're not fighting a lab partner to be allowed to do something with the lab equipment, right? They're doing all of it. It's very powerful.
That's wonderful. And with the STEM field, what's nice about them is they typically are a little bit higher demand for job outcomes or for recruiting. Can you speak a little bit to your then connection from once a student graduates and goes into industry? Do you think about programs that are high demand, or do you think about building relationships with folks in Pennsylvania and otherwise that you can place your students? The answer is probably yes, but I'm interested to hear how you think about it.
Yeah, so we are a small college, and so we draw the majority of our students from the region.
Yeah.
When we develop new programs, it is certainly with our region in mind and what the workforce needs are for the region. And that's also because we give a very kind of practical hands-on education, and we're placing students in internships and summer jobs and so forth. And so if you look at the outcomes of our students, a large number of our chemistry students end up in the pharmaceutical business. If you know anything about this part of Pennsylvania, that's huge. Our two largest employers in the Lehigh Valley are large healthcare systems. And so we are continually placing people there, not just nurses, but also business majors who did the healthcare management certificate. And so, yes, you absolutely develop programs thinking about the needs of your region.
And this is probably for like more of a vanity question, but at least to the best of my understanding, what separates a college and university is offering graduate programs. And you clearly do that. Is there any merit in becoming, a Cedar Crest University versus Cedar Crest College?
It is something that we're talking about. I don't know that I've been persuaded that it's a game changer in any way for who we are. And I will say in full transparency, I graduated from Boston College. I got my doctorate at Boston College, which is an extraordinary university. It is not Boston University, and Boston College will never become Boston University because there already is one. I think what you do when you make that change, it is to signal to your audience that you have graduate programs, right? To pull it back to that. We may go that route if we believe that it will help us with recruiting. But at the moment, I don't see the advantage to it.
Yeah,
Looks like
especially with a brand as strong as yours, that makes a lot of sense to be where you are.
It's my turn, but I need to warm you up for this one, Elizabeth.
Listen to my important question.
Just to remove you from what Douglas was asking. So I want to go back to the sciences for a minute. And yesterday, or the day before, I get my days mixed up, I was interviewing the executive director of Advancing Women in Technology. It's a nonprofit that supports women in tech. And it was the founder is a high-level executive in Amazon and so on. And what obviously the conversation revolved around women in technology and middle managers, women who are middle managers who are getting into tech and exiting tech, maybe going on to start families and then not coming back into tech. And I asked her, if you do have a woman who decides to go start a family or for whatever reason leaves technology moves really fast and it can be intimidating to come back in it because it moves so quick. Can you talk a little bit about, I was thinking in my mind of a dissertation study, are there more women in tech and more interest in women in tech at women's colleges, and how is it at colleges that are co-ed because of, I don't know, there just aren't as many women in tech and it's a male-dominated industry and so on and so on. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings about women in technology and how that's going at Cedar Crest and any trends you've seen?
Sure. I'm going to pull it way back for a minute, and you may regret having asked the question, only because this question about women in male-dominated fields is a really important one. I'm old enough that I remember when the tech industry was really starting up, and I was a optimistic enough young feminist to say, great, a brand new field that doesn't have the historical drag of women having been kept out of it. When I am ending my career in the 2020s or 2030s, that will be the example of a field which is beautifully represented 50-50 men and women. And instead, what we've seen is that tech quickly became not just male dominated, but marked by a particular kind of sometimes ugly, kind of macho culture. That I think is a large reason why women who leave to have children don't go back into it. That it's set up to move quickly, to penalize people who take time off, not because the tech develops that quickly, frankly, but because that's been part of its culture. And I know women in the tech industries, and they're very aware that they need to find a way to make a culture that's more accepting of women and frankly, other identities as well. But having said all that, we are where we are, and women feel excluded, right? Women feel excluded. And so Cedar Crest tried to start a computer science program 25 years ago and had very difficult time recruiting young women to go into it. And so my predecessor eliminated the major because it didn't have enough enrollment to justify it. And we've tried to start up other programs to bring women into I'm talking about computer technology. We have other kinds of technology. And it has been an uphill battle because it is such a deeply ingrained issue. It's something we're studying. We're trying to figure out. I believe strongly that we have an important role to play in getting more women into technology fields. But if you don't have the demand going in, it's hard to start it up when you're not going to have the demand. So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem that we are trying to address.
I'm glad I asked you the question, just for the record. I don't regret it at all, because it's an important perspective. And you can't bring change if you don't ask the most important questions, that's for sure. So I appreciate your answer. Douglas.
Yeah, and to kind of carry on the theme of technology, so I was at a P3 EDU conference, which is a public-private partnership conference, and it was really interesting because in the same room, in the same panel, you had two colleges, and I won't name either one of them for their sake, but one of them looked at technology, and I'm not joking, as literally they were fighting to go from chalkboards to whiteboards because that was a different technology. And I'm you can't make these things up. On the flip side, on the exact same panel, there was a college that was looking to blow everything up, restack it, just do all of these sort of innovative buzzwords, the chatbots and all these sort of things. And not that they don't have their place, but you could really see the two very extremes of the industry. And I'd be curious, with your experience, where does the pendulum lie for success? Because at some point you can overinvest and over-innovate and do things, and it actually doesn't provide any value, but you also can't be the laggard on the other end. So where's that right pendulum, and maybe where's that right pendulum for Cedar Crest?
So I think that where the right pendulum swings is first with a realization that technology is not a magic solution to whatever your problem is. And so I think for those people over the last 10 years who have said massively open online courses is going to be the key to our labor costs, because we won't have 25 or 35 students in a course, but 2,000, 3,000 students in a course, or that online instruction is somehow cheaper than hiring a PhD, again, to teach the same 25 or 35 students. So there is no technology. It's not going to be chatbots. It's not going to be anything that will upend the business model of higher education enough to make it truly affordable to students and provide the same quality and the same outcomes, right? Nonetheless, we now have a very technology literate population. And if we are not using technology appropriately, they will not learn, right? If somebody had told me in my own college years that I had to read everything from a scroll that was beautifully calligraphed and illuminated, it would not have reached me, right? I grew up on the printed page. That's what works. Our students today, they need their information to come at them through not just digital sources, but multimedia digital sources. And so that's video, it's podcasts, it's highly interactive digital print. That's what they need to learn. And so the strategy has to be enough with the students, not so far ahead that you lose them and not so far behind that you lose them, that you can educate them where they are. And to me, that's what technology does at its absolute best.
True.
That's really well said. And I'm curious, with your experience, and I say this tongue in cheek, sort of the educational industrial complex, there's a lot going on around it with tech. Are there good, both for-profit and not-for-profit partners on the tech side that are helping you get there? Or are we, and I'm a part of this, we as the technological side of education, are we missing the mark?
That's a very good question.
Are you sure you're ready for the truth, Douglas?
Maybe not.
I will say that there are a lot of corporations out there, as you well know, who have a very wide variety of technological services to sell. And when you are a Cedar Crest and you're trying to keep costs down for students, you have to be very, very careful about where you invest, why you invest, and what you're expecting as an outcome. We had one unsuccessful foray into an OPM arrangement, despite having done a good amount of research. It was not a good investment. It did not work out for us at all. So just as speaking about technology broadly, technology partners need to be addressing the specific needs of the specific institution and not the sector generally. If that makes sense.
That is fantastic advice, and I do think that's exactly right. As Cedar Crest is very different than other named institutions in Pennsylvania, and you're going to have very different needs.
Yes,
there is that's really interesting that you guys just had that, because it's technology is meant to scale, and higher education now more than ever is about personalized learning, which means to deliver personalized learning, you need to have a system that's personalized for your institution to personalize the learning, but technology is meant to scale. So you have this really interesting paradigm, situation happening. But I mean, that is a big takeaway, I feel like, from this episode. You guys made me smarter all of a sudden just having that conversation, because I'm going, yeah, that's true, right? We're talking about individual personalized learning experience, but technology meant to scale. And sometimes those don't match. Right?
Yeah. And when you try to build for the middle, you lose with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Elizabeth, we like to end our episodes. By the way, it's been a great conversation. I love how passionate you are about the work that you do. You wouldn't be there for so long if you weren't. So yes, that says a lot. And we know higher education tenures, particularly at the president's level, are more short-lived now than they ever have been. Some of that due to pandemic, but the average was already declining below 6 years. I think it's five and change now. So your number of years far out supersedes that.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I've been at the college for 29 years. This is only my 6th year as president.
Yes, but I meant yes, as 6 years as president. But your time at one university is pretty incredible. With that said, we want to know, what didn't we say about Cedar Crest College? What didn't we ask you? Something you're hoping to say, somewhere you're speaking, a new program, anything at all you want to plug? And number 2, what do you see as the future of higher education?
Okay, good on ending on 2 small questions. One thing, we were talking about the power of small, and I wanted to give an example of an added value that we can give to our education to our students because we're small. And it's such an extraordinary thing. Even thinking about it, I'm just getting goosebumps right now. So we launched in 2017 a program that we call the Sophomore Expedition. And what we do is we take our entire sophomore class abroad in the spring, their spring break of their sophomore year, to a single destination. So they travel together as a group and experience a new culture together as a group, and they do not pay for it.
Amazing.
I have been, and my predecessor, raising money diligently to have it be fully funded. We have an endowment. A little bit of it funds a good part of it. Some of it's still coming out of our operating budget, but my goal is to have it fully funded by the time I end my presidency, because again, I mentioned we have 40% first generation students. So many of them have never been on an airplane, never been out of Pennsylvania. And for us to travel together and have this experience abroad with them, in many cases for the first time, is incredibly powerful. The learning that you see over the 4 years of college, you see happen in a week, right? The level of learning is amazing. We were in Marrakesh last year. We're getting ready to leave for Rome on March 3rd. You can't do that if you're much larger than we are, right? Because that's 180 students, 20 faculty and staff. You can make that happen, not much larger. So these are students who would have thought they couldn't afford to study abroad. And we make it so that not only can they afford it, but we take for granted that they're going. So they just go because that's what's expected. I'm really proud of that initiative. I'm really proud that we do it for the students.
If you need to chronicle that by podcast, let me know. I'll be happy to join you.
Yeah, it would be amazing. It's a truly, truly life-changing experience. And I have traveled a fair amount. And when I went on the first one, I'm like, oh, this will be so lovely for them. I'm happy to be along with it. It changed me. Right. Amazing. So I had a moment of hubris. The future of higher education. So this is my view. We are at an inflection point with higher education. Higher education costs a lot of money. And it costs a lot of money because that's what it costs. Nobody's getting rich. Well, I'm not stockpiling a pile of cash somewhere. We're not wildly overpaying our faculty. We don't have football coaches. And we're going to have to decide how, as a society, we are going to pay for the societal good of having an educated workforce. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the rhetoric about the value of there not being a value to higher education is really a way of saying, oh, it's so expensive, I don't think we should pay for it. Okay, but we have to have an educated workforce. So over the next, I'm going to say 10 years, we're either going to decide that we as a nation, through our government, are going to invest in our citizenry getting educated, whether it's college education or something else, or we're going to say this is a private good and only those people who can afford it should have it.
Wow. There is a lot to think about with that ending, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a great conversation, I must say, and it's made great firstly by my guest co-host. There he is, the man with the long title, Douglas Carlson, at an amazing company called Lead Squared, a great partner of the podcast. Douglas, what did you think of this convo?
Oh, this is Elizabeth. This was such a pleasure. Thank you for your insights. And, I always learn a little bit from these podcasts, but I like sincerely walked away with some big nuggets. So thank you.
From me, you mean?
Oh,
for
yeah,
me, big nuggets for me. Oh, okay. I know that's not what you really meant, Douglas. And of course, our guest today, 2 times she really owned the microphone, although she killed the episode first when she was talking about Cedar Crest College and what the work that she does at the beginning, and secondarily when she was talking about the study abroad program, she leaned into that mic and gave it a little extra pop. Ladies and gentlemen, she's Dr. Elizabeth Meade. She's president at Cedar Crest College. Elizabeth, it's been an honor to have you here. Did you have a good experience today on EdUp?
I had a great time. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk about the thing that I'm most passionate about.
All right. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. It's time to
Level up.
The beginning of a new era in higher education begins with you. Order your copy of Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education by Kate Colbert, Dr. Joe Salustio, with contributions by Elvin Freitas. It's higher education's must-read book of 2022. Discover how you can seize the moment to change higher education forever. Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, now available on Amazon. For bulk orders, contact Kate, Joe, or Elvin